Hi, I want to talk a little bit about preparing your clay to throw it on the potter's wheel, specifically how you would wedge the clay. This is the wedging table. It's in the corner of the classroom, and while we normally have 4 stations, we will probably only be able to use the 2 outer end ones, so I'm all the way at one side of this. You want to make sure the wedging table is clean. You bring your clay on over. I've got a bag of recycled clay here. And what I'd like you to do is when you go to sit down, have about 4 to 5 balls of clay. As long as you're going to the trouble of wedging, you might as well. And about 1.5 pounds is a good amount. You don't have to wedge, and for some of you in the beginning, your wedging skills may be more detrimental than positive. So you can just take the ball of clay and round it over and start like this. But you're going to have to learn how to wedge to at least reclaim your dumped pots. And I still dump, 30 years later, I still, push them too far and they collapse and I have to wedge them up. So more on that later. I find that rather than wedging smaller bits of clay like 1.5 pound balls, it's easier for me to wedge a larger piece, maybe twice that, and then cut it in half once I go. So I'm going to take one of these lugs of clay, I'm going to cut it in half on the cutoff wire and wedge it up. So here's this block of clay. I set it on the wedging table. What I'm going to do is grab my hands on both sides and rock it forward. And so I'm rolling and rocking the clay, and I'm cupping the outside of the clay with my hands. So see how it makes this sort of spiral or ram's head type of form. And this is what we're going to rock and roll this clay and cause any air bubbles that might be trapped, which hopefully in this brand new clay there won't be any, to pop here. You will have air bubbles when you're reclaiming your dumped pots. Okay, so it's a rocking and rolling motion. I'm not sort of slamming it to the wedging table and having to peel it up and fight it back, but rather I'm just sort of folding it on itself and rocking and rolling. You can see that it does leave little bits of clay, which we'll talk about cleaning up at the end. So rocking and rolling, and granted, I have been doing this for a long time, so it's second nature to me. I could, watch TV while I was doing this if I had a TV in my studio. I just saw a little air bubble pop, maybe from when I smushed it and peeled it up. So let's see, there's one right there, just popping. Let's see if I can show that. Right there, we got one pop. And when I usually sort of count off about 40 in my head, and sometimes depends on, I may do 40, depending on how I'm feeling about the clay, I may turn it around and do another 40 this way. And again, just to slow it down, I don't know if you can slow down the video. What I'm doing is rocking, rolling, cupping my hands on the side, and causing any air bubbles to be compressed and popped at this little seam, at this little area right here, this ram's head kind of form. Now I can stop and check by slicing it and looking at the surface. I actually did see a little air bubble there. That makes me concerned. Now I want to smack this back together to to not trap any air in there. I don't want to just sort of gently put it together. And this is where, given the COVID times, you may, if you don't already wear glasses, want to wear safety glasses. And I believe I have a bunch of these, or I can access a bunch so that those of you can have them. Because there does, when we do, let's show you what I just got. Can you see clay spattered all over my glasses? So when we smack it together like that, we are going to cause spray. It's cleaned up now, but you'll see clay all over. So there, you do have some safety concerns. And as a shared space, it's going to be, there's not really much we can do other than assume that you could have picked something up here and you should wash your hands immediately after this. You certainly can wear gloves, and in the wintertime in my studio I wear these because the clay is so cold. I don't have heat. It just makes like a weird noise. I could demonstrate wearing them, but it's like a squawking noise that you guys would probably find kind of annoying. Okay, so as I get to the end, I sort of do shorter and shorter rolls. I kind of roll it up on itself, and then I could cut this into, sometimes I'll cut them into 3 even balls, and I'll then round these over. I don't want to put a flat thing down on the wheel. And we'll talk about being aware of the spiral. Like, it could be voodoo, but there's sort of a spiral that's been formed in this. And in this case, since the wheel is going to turn this way, I'd almost think that I might be unwinding that. So I'll put that on the bottom when I put it on the wheel head. And I've got 3 nice even-sized balls. So we're not going to worry about weighing them, but we do want them to sort of be approximately the same size. Take your balls, 3 or 4 or 5, off to, throw them back in the bag, keep them wet. Take them back to the wedging table. Take them over to your wheel. I want to wipe this wire down, and we probably should wipe that with a sanitized wipe or spritz it. I don't know that spritzing the plaster is going to make any difference because it's so absorbent. But what I do want to mention is I want you to clean your clay off of here. This isn't about COVID. This is just about being sensitive to the next person coming after you. And we just want to get these little bits of clay off so that they don't dry. Well, they will dry, so that little dry chunks don't go into the next person. So once I've got all that stuff off of there, and notice I'm using a plastic old gift card or rubber rib, please don't use metal on the surface because it will scratch the plaster, and those little chunks of plaster are a problem in clay. More on that later, just trust me. So I just use my sponge, clean this up, and I am ready to go. All right, that's all there is to it. That and 30 or 40 years of practice. All right, onto the wheel.